Hello and happy Thursday. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Happy holidays if Christmas isn't what you do. I hope you guys have all just, regardless, had a great holiday. And if you're new here, my name is Leslyn and I'm a therapist by day. I come into my lives on Mondays and Thursdays typically as a way of kind of giving back, answering questions, offering people support. So if you need a little bit of that or you have a question, feel free. Hey, Melissa, Merry Christmas, friend. I hope it was a really good, hi, Kelly. I hope, Melissa, your Christmas was a good one, and that your husband is recovering and feeling better. So yes, I'm seeing a few people pop in. Merry Christmas. I hope that it was a good one and that you were surrounded by love and people that really took care of you. That's how my Christmas was. People were, oh, so happy for you, Melissa. That's awesome. Mine was really good. It was quiet this year. Two of the four kids are in Europe. Of course, Frank lives there, and Sarah went to visit, Sarah and Josh, and the other two were here, and it was just really nice, and they all spoiled me. So I felt blessed, and I've had my youngest around for almost a week. She leaves tomorrow, and I'm gonna miss her terribly. But yeah, I'm kind of ready. I have a couple things coming up, just a couple little visits over the weekend, and then I'm just ready to have another day of, I don't know, relaxation on Sunday. I'm not going to do anything on Monday, rather, and then go back to work. But I haven't really worked. I've had two sessions this whole week, and it's been a really nice break. Oh, that's excellent. Good, Melissa. I know he was probably so happy to have everybody around without a ton of, since he wasn't as mobile. So good. And hello for the people, that are popping in if you don't know me. My name is Leslyn, and I'm glad you're here. I'm a therapist by day, and I come into my lives as a way of just kind of giving back. If you have any questions or you need a little support, please don't hesitate to ask. Other than that, I just kind of chit chat. Let's see. I haven't really done much. I've been working on the e-course and building a ton of hello, Bree, building a ton of material to go with that e-course. Super time consuming, but I'm getting excited about the progress that people should make on it. It's going good, I think. It's the first course, the one I'm working on, is Journey to Authentic Living. And I'm super excited about it because it really has people diving deep into a lot of the things we do at the retreat: values, beliefs, self-awareness, what it means to how you experience judgment, taking a look at your automatic thoughts. And a lot of the worksheets are meant to sit down and really be reflective exercises, but I have spaces for you to write and fill out, answer a bunch of questions. So it's going good. I'm hoping that that it moves a little bit faster because I'm building all the worksheets from scratch, and that's a little time consuming because I am not a graphic designer. But I actually slowed down a little bit because I put together a bunch of ideas and then gave it to a graphic designer who didn't have a clue really what I was hoping to get people to think about, and so what they did was really irrelevant to the course. But I'm moving in the right direction, I think, myself, and I've got a kind of a basic template that I created that I'm just using now for every worksheet. So it's going good. And now once I get that all done, I just have to do the videos, which is a whole nother kind of setup. But I bought myself a new desktop iMac. Won't be here till the middle of January, but it'll should make my life a little easier in that regard. The iMac I'm working on is 14 years old, and so it's yeah, new skills is right. The iMac I'm working on is 14 years old, so it is painful sometimes to try and do anything constructive with video. So I'm just going to wait for my new one to come in before I try doing the video. So it'll be the end of January before the course comes out. But hopefully I'll have one full course and then a couple of micro courses by the end of the first quarter. So there you go. And collecting new toys, I know. You know, the one that I'm working on, I figure 12 years was a really solid. Hey, Linda, so good to see you. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas. Anyway, what was I going to say about... What is the course about? Hi, well, welcome, Daily. John. Welcome, John. The first course that I'm doing, my objective for 2024 is to build a number of e-courses. The first one is Journey to Authentic Living. Thank you for asking. It is a series of 5 modules, and each module has 3 sections in it. So 15 sections leading you kind of on a little bit of a self-discovery journey and teaching you what to do with the things that you discover as a way of helping you live more connected to your core. As a therapist, I find that happiness is more easily achieved when we understand what it means to live authentically. Because if we're not living authentically, we're not going to be happy. And authenticity isn't just this superficial thing. You really kind of have to dive a little bit deeper. So I teach that in the retreat that I do twice a year, but not everybody can afford the retreat. So the course is going to be a very, very scaled down version of maybe a skeletal version of what I teach and what I work on in the retreat. So that's going to be the first one. Then I have a couple of mini courses dealing with anxiety, coping skills, and those are the 2 that I have planned, hopefully to come out by the end of the first quarter. But you know, I don't know about you guys, but time is evaporating so quickly. It seems like I'm talking about it a lot with various people, and they'll say, gosh, I don't know where the time's gone. And I am right there because I don't know where the time's gone either. So welcome and Merry Christmas to all the people that are sliding in and moving in and out of my life. I hope everybody had at least a peaceful Christmas. My daughter and I were driving down to Baltimore from Delaware yesterday, and we were driving down to feed the cats of another daughter who's over in Europe. And the weather was nasty and the traffic was nasty. And we get just about halfway, maybe a little over halfway down there. And she says, Mom, I forgot the keys. I'm like, okay, well, I guess we weren't meant to go today. So we turn around and drive home. And the traffic was so intense. I'm like, hey, listen, let's get off the highway and we'll take a back road. So we get off the highway and we're going down this hill. And all of a sudden, I don't know where my head was, but all of a sudden she goes, holy crap, or oh my God, whatever she said. And about that time I don't want to say I was driving, so I don't want to say that I was like zoned out, but I guess I just didn't have my gaze to the traffic coming at me. But I looked up just as a pickup truck was airborne and landed sideways on the road. And apparently that it was coming toward us and went up on an embankment and kind of went like this and then landed. It went into the air and landed on its side. Everybody was okay. Both of the people that were in the truck walked away. But it was kind of confirmation to us that we just needed to go home. So she drove down today and took care of the cats while I waited for some packages, and it was a much nicer day to drive. Everybody got to where they needed to go better. Melissa, your comment, I really thought I knew myself, but dedicating time to me is showing me so much. Yay. Isn't that the truth though? You know, and I want to say that's where the onion comes in, right? Yes, thank you, John. It did. Everybody was fine and everything worked out. I tried to tell my daughter yesterday that I really hear those things or take those things as signs, if you will. You know, and I don't get upset about getting delayed. I don't get upset about any of that stuff because I just figured that's the universe taking care of me in a very unorthodox way. And I'm just going to trust that it wasn't the thing that we needed to be doing. Otherwise, we both had keys in our head, but neither one of us thought to grab them. So anyway, I was thinking, Melissa, that 100%, John, 100% the way I feel, what I believe. I think that this idea that just when I think I knew what there was to know, I uncover something else. I think that's where that metaphor of the onion and peeling back the layers. Hello, Robin. Merry Christmas. And almost Happy New Year. Peeling the layers of the onion. You know, I just really believe that we can't get to the deeper levels until we do the work at the upper levels, right? And so I know for me, same, John, 100%. For me, being able to be open to whatever is next and whatever new thing happens is always really important. Knowing that I'll never know everything there is to know, and that I can learn at any given time. You love card time with your kids? Same. Really anytime. One of my favorite things to do actually is to just hang out and listen to them talk to each other. That's when I hear great conversations and feel I feel like I get to know them because they're not as guarded with one another as they might be with me, although I'm pretty lucky and they don't tend to be guarded with me. But I really love that too. Conversations in the car and then just hanging out. And, back in the days when you read a newspaper, right? I could just pick up a newspaper and pretend like I was reading it, and they would just have these great conversations. So, yeah. Did anybody get a gift that they absolutely love, or was there any gift that they thought was, what were they thinking? Or did you give something that you were really excited about? I would love to hear that kind of thing, whatever that was for you. I stayed up until 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve so that I could watch my grandkids open their gifts. So if you don't know, my grandkids live in Belgium. And they were all up around 7 a.m., which is 1 my time. And so I dozed on the couch a little bit, set an alarm, got up, and I'm so very lucky that my son and daughter-in-law are willing to just kind of prop the iPad up and I just hang out. I just hang out like on the iPad. I'm just a face on the iPad on the floor in their space. And an espresso. You don't drink coffee. What were they thinking? Hi, Stacy. Merry Christmas. That's funny. I mean, not funny, but odd, huh? Who gave that to you? And doesn't they have chai, right? Do you drink chai? I think you can get chai pods. That's kind of funny. My grandkids, I started to say I feel really fortunate that I get to just hang out. You re-gifted to your hubby. Good for you. I get to just hang out with them and watch or participate in their lives. And even though they live, 4,000 miles away, I feel like I'm there a fair amount and just hanging out because they're so good at just putting me on the, putting the phone or the iPad on the table. Sometimes the kids will walk around. I have to close my eyes so it doesn't make me dizzy. But especially the two older ones will say, Mimi, look at my blah, 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 blah. And the baby often just takes the phone and then leaves it someplace. So I'm having to hang up and call back or whatnot. Oh, John, that's amazing. It truly is. I told my kids when they asked me, I did give them things that I would never buy for myself. But I also told them that I really do value time and experiences with them. And that at the end of the day, just a invitation to dinner, which actually they're very good at, but I'm at that point in my life where if they would give me IOUs for hard labor, I could get my basement cleaned. Or, the garage things moved around in the garage. And honestly, all I have to do is ask. And generally speaking, they're really good about doing that. But not having to ask is also nice. I'm very blessed. So, I'm glad you had that also, because I agree. There's really not much better than that. You can have all the things, but they're kind of meaningless if you don't have the opportunity to enjoy time with family. And yet I know that there are people who are disconnected from family. Last week, I had a couple of sessions where people were feeling the pain of being disconnected from people, especially people that they cared about. And so we made a couple of plans on things that they could do to be connected, in volunteering in certain ways, spending time with friends. Yeah. Speaking of disconnected, I watched, do you remember the name of that movie?
A Man Named Otto.
I watched A Man Named Otto. Half of it last night, the other half today. It had Tom Hanks as the lead, A Man Named Otto. I think it came out in 2019. If you guys haven't seen it and you need a good cry, grab a box of tissues, jump on Netflix, and watch A Man Named Otto. It was a tough watch, and but it was good. You know, it was the power of connection. I didn't know what to expect, Melissa, and we only watched half of it last night because Em was watching with me, and she hit a point and she's like, okay, Mom, I'm setting a boundary. I'm not watching anymore. And it was late, so I just went to bed, and she was gone today, and so I watched the other half, and I just really cried through the whole thing. So I'm glad that she didn't watch any more of it last night. But first of all, Tom Hanks, you know, I mean, my gosh, he's so good. And, you know, especially this time of year, I often think about the Polar Express and how good he is in that. And so this character in A Man Named Otto was so completely different. And it was a little bit of cognitive dissonance for my brain. But honestly, the story, hi Katie, we're talking about A Man Named Otto. I think it came out in 2019, maybe 2018. But yeah, grab a box of tissues and watch it. The reason I brought it up is because it ultimately is about connection. And it's just a really, really powerful example that family of choice is often, hi Bella, Merry Christmas. Family of choice is often just as connecting as the family of origin, and sometimes more so, right? Sometimes even more so. And family of choice comes in the most unexpected places. And in his regard, the key was being open to it, being open to a different idea of connection. And I think that that's a very powerful message, right? So, you know, it's so interesting, the kinds of things. Santa was good to me. I hope he was to you as well, and Happy New Year. Yeah, and by the way, just a reminder to my Tilt subscribers, our call isn't going to be on Saturday night, since it's New Year's Eve, but it will be the following Sunday night. Whatever that Sunday is, the 5th, the 6th maybe, the 6th, I think. So write that in your calendar, and remember, it's 8 p.m. Eastern for that call. I had pizza for dinner tonight, and it is sitting up here for some reason. Let's see, what else? Sunday's the 7th. Thank you, Lady Heather. I appreciate that. So for my Tilt subs, Sunday the 7th, 8 p.m. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, when you subscribe to my channel, I do a Zoom call once a month with all of my subscribers so that I get to see you. It's one, and they get to talk to each other, because honestly, it's a really cool little community. And some friendships have already formed out of that, which I'm just so grateful for. And I know that you all are too. Let's see, what else? Does anybody have any questions for me? If you've popped in and you don't know me, or this is your first time here, I just really want to extend a warm welcome. If I tap the screen a bunch, it helps my algorithm. Thank you, Cheryl. Yes, please do that. Anything to help the algorithm. It's, I'm not going to complain about it because it's pointless. You know, I've been doing this for more than 3 years now, and there's just so many variations. And I don't get it, and I know I'm just really trusting that the people that need to hear what I have to say show up, and that's good enough for me. So if you're new here, welcome. I'm really grateful you are here. This is a really great community. I'm Leslyn. I'm a therapist by day, by profession. And one of the things I try to do here, aside from create community, is help. And this is kind of my way of giving back. Thanks, Katie. If you have a question, if you have a problem, if you need support, that's what my lives are often for. Otherwise, you just kind of hear me talking, and I'd much rather help you than to ramble on and on about me. I am getting all of my lives over on my YouTube channel, so if you miss a live, or you hear something and you want to go back and listen to it, and you're willing to listen to me talk for another hour, you can pick them up there. All of November's are there. December's will get there in the next couple of days. It sounds like it would be easy to just download it from TikTok and upload it to YouTube, but it is way more time consuming than you can imagine if you haven't tried it yourself, especially when the videos are so stinking long. When I had an intern, that was her job. She edited all the videos and made them more palatable, but I don't have time to do that, so I just put the raw, unfiltered, unedited video on my YouTube channel. Let's see. I'll give you a little commercial. I did put a video out for the other day, but don't forget, on the 5th, Thursday the 5th, 6th, 7th, Thursday the 4th, we are going to have a book discussion. I'm going to talk about the new codependency. So I did a video about this the other day, but codependency is such a huge challenge for people in their relationships. And I find that if people who are people pleasers, people who have grown up in addiction, or people who've grown up in abandonment, have a lot of codependent traits that we will talk about how to work with and heal. You don't have to read the book, but I will be working with that book on Thursday next week, a week from tonight. So please feel free to join me then. The entire live is really going to be me talking about that book and answering questions that you have about that book. Thanks for the follow, John. It's been a challenge for you. Robin, I'll be so interested to find out why. Being around friends has made you feel bad. You're tired of having your feelings hurt. Yeah, Bella, it's The New Codependency by Melody Beattie. And I have a video about this. You can go to my feed and look for the video. The New Codependency by Melody Beattie. Bye, Stacy. Happy New Year. We'll see you next week. Cheryl, do you think, I'm curious, are you growing? Or do you think that maybe you need to set boundaries? Because if you're having your feelings hurt, it seems to me that there's something happening. Often that happens when we start to grow and change, and the people in our kind of circle of origin don't necessarily appreciate the change, and so that there's kind of tension in that separation. And it's really normal to separate away from old groups when we're growing, or when someone is growing. Doesn't mean that it feels any better, but it does mean that there's a positive transition potential. So you certainly don't have to share, but if I can help you in any way with that, I'd love to. And Robin, what has been, if you don't mind sharing, like, what is it, kind of a personal challenge, or are you finding it hard to read? John, thank you, and you're very welcome. We hope to see you again. Come back Thursday for a great discussion. Hi, Mark. Happy Merry Christmas to you, by the way, and Happy New Year coming up. I'm really curious. You know, the thing about the new codependency is all of us are going to see ourselves, or at least a little bit of ourselves in that, right? Everybody is a little bit codependent. Hello, Lily, and Merry Christmas to you. Is it normal to have an angry outburst at a therapist if the client doesn't feel they're understood? Well, I think an angry outburst is one option. I don't know if it's normal. I would say that not feeling understood can certainly create an angry reaction. But I would encourage you to try to work with that anger. I mean, obviously that's your therapist's job, is to work with the anger. Anytime a client is sitting with me and gets angry at me, I see that as an opportunity to work on whatever it is that they're feeling angry about, right? In psychoanalytic theory, we would say that there's probably some transference happening. And Katie, hold tight, because I love answering that question. Transference is when you're seeing the therapist kind of as a source of the issue that you have to work on. And that's really normal. That's often what the point of therapy is trying to identify what is this thing. And if we can be reflections of the work that needs to be done, it can be really powerful. So I would suggest to you, Lily, to journal about what you felt when you were misunderstood, really journal about that. Really think about all of the other times outside of therapy where you felt misunderstood and what that really represents to you. Because there, and then take that journal entry to to the therapist. You can also say to the therapist, I need tools, and ask for them. You know, for everybody who's in therapy, it's really important to understand that you're paying for a service and an expertise. Even if your insurance is covering it, you're probably paying for the insurance and you're paying for the service and the expertise. So ask for what you need. That's perfectly okay. Yes, the therapist is the educated one, but if you're asking and advocating for yourself, then they can either say, I can meet that request or I can't, right? If I go to my ophthalmologist with a GYN problem, they're going to say, well, that's not an area that I work in, right? I'm an eye doctor, not a lady part doctor. And so even though they're the educated one, if that's not their area of expertise, they're going to tell me. Or they may say, hey, my wife's a GYN, call her, blah, 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 blah. That was a weird analogy, but I think you know what I'm saying. Katie, in terms of finding a therapist, I'm going to suggest, and this is kind of the thing I say all the time, go to psychologytoday.com, put in your zip code where it prompts right at the top, and it will bring up all of the therapists who work within a certain range. I think you can set the range. All of the therapists who work within a certain range. Now you can also create filters for online therapy or virtual sessions or in-person sessions. You can select a filter for gender of your therapist, for the specialty of your therapist. And there's a number of other issues. If you want a PhD, a PsyD, a master's level, and you may not know, and I would say to you that it really doesn't matter. That particular thing doesn't really matter. What does matter, once you get a list, scroll through each photograph. My suggestion is to look for a face first. Look for a face that you can trust. And I know that that sounds odd, but there's a fair amount of research to suggest that facial features impact our ability to trust. And so one of the most important elements in healing is the relationship between the therapist and the client, and the client's belief that the therapist has the capacity to help them. Now, once you see a face that you can trust, read their bio. If they say that their focus is crystals and existentialism, that might not be your vibe. If they say their focus is mindfulness and cognitive behavior, that might be a better vibe for you. And if you don't know the difference between what I said, then go with your gut instinct and go for a session or 2 or 3. Usually I would say it's kind of like dating. You need about 3 sessions to figure out if this is somebody that you feel you can work with. Now, I know that it is a pain in the bahoot for us to date a therapist. But honestly, dating is and I don't mean literally dating, don't misunderstand me. finding a therapist is akin to dating and looking for a partner. Once you have a therapist that you like, the value of that relationship will be the healing that takes place. But if you don't trust that person and you don't believe in their ability to help you, then there won't be any healing taking place. So don't go for 10 sessions. Try to really think about it in the same way that you would think about looking for a life partner. That's what my suggestion would be. I would also say that, I know in the filter you can decide whether you want somebody that takes insurance. The other thing I would say to you is that your options are going to be quadrupled, if not some exponential element of that, if you opt for virtual sessions. Because then anyone in the state where you live can work with you. Anyone, regardless if they're on the other side of the state. A therapist must be licensed in the state where you live. And that's really important. If you're working with somebody who is not licensed and they are giving you healing advice, I think you're putting your wellness in jeopardy. There are many, 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 many people out there who put themselves out there as coaches for all kinds of problems. For example, a narcissistic abuse coach. Just because someone has experienced narcissistic abuse or has taken a class about narcissistic abuse doesn't mean they are qualified to help someone heal from narcissistic abuse. Okay? It is a good person to advocate for you. A coach is a good person to say, hey, listen, here are the things to look out for. Here's how you identify red flags, but they're not the people to help you heal. They're not trained in that. A licensed therapist has a master's degree at a minimum, and again, a minimum of 3 years of supervised work experience. So I do get really frustrated with the number of people who are holding themselves out as healing avenues, who are not qualified to do that. So, and it's a little bit like going to a chiropractor and asking them to do spine surgery for you. A chiropractor is excellent at what a chiropractor does, but they're not back surgeons. And we just wouldn't do that if you... So anyway, I don't need to bark up that tree terribly long. But the other thing I was going to say is if you had asked me in 2019 about virtual therapy, I would have said, no way. I need to see the person. I need to be in front of the person. And then in 2020, we didn't really have a choice, and I took my clients virtual, and it worked so well that 80% of my clients have opted to stay virtual. And that's says something. Hello, Mama Kay. Merry Christmas to you. what I would say about social work versus counseling, now I have a master's in counseling, but ironically, the MSW, the Masters of Social Work, was the first non-doctoral level position or credential that was available in the counseling profession, right? They would let's see, it would be an LCSW, right? Licensed clinical social worker. So it is true that LCSWs do not have as much clinical experience as masters in counseling. But because they were the first branch offered licenses as counselors, the profession and the credentialing is very, very similar today to what licensing credentialing is for somebody who has a master's in counseling. What you're looking for is a license. So if, yes, it's psychologytoday.com. You can go to any state board of licensing and verify whether or not someone has a license issued by that state. You can look up, for example, Pennsylvania State Board of Licensing, and they give you like all the various professions that the state issues licenses to. And one of them will be the Board of Marriage and Family Counseling, and you Google my name and it comes up and my license credentials are there. That's not the case with coaches. Coaches don't have to have any education. Literally, there's absolutely no governance, if you will, of people who no. You did. I just wanted to make sure that that you understood the difference. I don't feel like you were contradicting me. Just wanted to clarify, because LCSWs are licensed. That would be a licensed clinical social worker. They do have individualized training. An MSW by itself does not, but an LCSW does. And the organization, by the way, that kind of handles that is called KCREP, and it's the Council for Accreditation. I don't remember what it is. It's CACREP. And that's if somebody has met the criteria under KCREP, then they have the same education across the board. And that's nationally, by the way. You can also look for somebody who has passed the NCE, which is the National Counselor's Exam. But really, somebody can pass the National Counselor's exam and not having got their license. The license really says this individual has gone through all of the education requirements and meets all of the minimum credentials, and has been supervised for thousands of hours. Thousands. And when I got licensed, it was 3,600 postgraduate hours. So once I got my master's degree, I had to work under supervision for 3,600 hours before I could apply for my license. A coach, like just a narcissistic abuse coach, or I saw somebody call themselves a boundary coach. There's no requirement whatsoever anybody, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can hold themselves out to be a coach. Now, there are accredited coaches, but there's no minimum education requirements. You pay $5,000, you take some courses, and you go through some, I'll say, supervision. It is kind of a supervision program, and then you get accredited as a coach. And, you know, I often find myself exasperated with coaches, with people on the app, especially on TikTok, all of the apps, who talk about being trauma informed, which what that means is they've taken some kind of a class. It might even have a certificate with it that says, we've now informed you. Literally, this is it, you guys. You sit in a class for 8 hours, in most cases, and you get a certificate that says, across that 8 hours, we informed you of the consequences of trauma, the impact of trauma. And then those people go out and hold themselves out as healers. And it just, I worry about how many people are being further injured by the lack of experience. I see what happens just with the counselors that I supervise, and I listen to things that they say to clients, and I'm like, whew, yep, we can't do that. And that's people who have, the master's degree. Because of what it takes to be an SLP, also having begun a PhD in forensic psych, those people irk me. Yeah. Yeah. I get super tempted to call people out. I do in my closet, because I'm often listening to TikToks in my closet when I sit I have a vanity in there, and it's where I sit in the morning and do my makeup and watch TikToks, And inevitably somebody will come up and I'll be like, no. But, number one, I absolutely despise creating drama on the internet. Number two, I can't get the whole story from a 1 to 5 minute TikTok, and I don't have the time or the energy to necessarily reach out to all these people that are putting out poor information. So what I do is this, I talk at least to the 11 of you and say, be discerning. And hopefully you'll talk to 11 people each and you'll say, be discerning. Hopefully the 11 of you will say something to 11 people and you'll say, I heard this person on TikTok who is very qualified say we have to be more discerning. And then they'll tell people to be more discerning, and people will ultimately be more discerning. But it doesn't help me to call people out. And I don't think ultimately it helps them if they're not willing to hear it. There's a woman who talks about estranged parents, and she's speaking from her own experience and her own pain, which, by the way, is another critical requirement. Do not speak from unhealed pain. Don't try to teach from unhealed pain. You can certainly speak about it, right? But and there is an element of camaraderie, universality is really what it's called. When we connect with people in our shared pain, that absolutely is true. But one of the first things we talk about in counselor training is not to take clients that trigger open wounds, right? You can talk to people anonymously on the internet, but to get paid to work with somebody that is triggering or potentially triggering, that's not cool. And I see a lot of these people doing that. I see a lot of people doing that. I saw a lot of that with narcissism in 2020. There were so many people who were, as a matter of fact, I think there were websites started, and I mean, there was so much of that. But having said that, not everybody can afford to go to therapy, and there is healing. There's a helpful element in knowing that you're not alone in your experience. But there are boundaries that need to exist in that arena. So, yeah, I just went on a super long tangent about that. And Robin, you know, I totally appreciate your comment about reading these books that are triggering you, or how these pages in this book can be triggering. First of all, I would say I know you're working with a therapist, and I think that that's great, and so I feel safe still recommending the book to you. And all of these things that you feel are triggering, that's powerful if you can read it from a distance, right? And note it and really pay attention to the somatic response that you're having. There's another person, and they were kind of talking to each other, these two women who talk about estranged parents. One is more bold and maybe even a little abrasive, and the other one is kind of passive and still wounded. And the one who's bold and a little more abrasive is why was I saying this? She definitely talks about her pain from good, Robin, perfect. She definitely talks about her pain from kind of this distant space. Apparently, she's done a lot of healing, a lot of work, and she has seemingly a pretty healthy perspective. Anyway, it's just those two people in particular are really good examples of why we need to be discerning and why we need to pay attention to the way we feel when we hear things on the internet. I was going to say to you that this woman who's a little bit more abrasive, one of the things she says that I applaud is that when you are triggered, our tendency is to walk away or defend against that trigger. But when we are triggered, it's absolutely, if you have the strength, absolutely valuable to turn toward the trigger, look at it from a distance, back up, but just look at it. Don't back up and turn away. Back up and look at it as if it was a movie playing out on an outdoor movie screen, and notice everything about it. Because that trigger is informing you that strong, so keep in mind, a trigger is a strong emotional reaction to something. And one of the things Melissa said right in the very beginning of our discussion tonight is that she thought she knew herself really well, and yet the more work that she does, the more she's learning about herself. And if we can hang with our triggers, they can teach us about those places that we still need to heal, right? Or that we need, that we're ready. Maybe we notice something that we're ready to go back. I didn't see half of my wounds until I could get enough distance from them so that they weren't crushing me, right? Imagine I burned my finger the other day. I was making bacon and a big thing of grease splattered. And I got a big blister, right? There's a little red spot, I guess. Big blister here. And so that was a fresh wound. And imagine that that represents an emotional wound. When I went and took a shower later, even though I was able to take my hand out of the ice water, the minute I got in the shower and put it under warm water, it hurt again like heck, right? And so our emotional wounds are a little bit like that. We get them kind of stabilized to the point where we can function, and then something happens like a hot shower on a blister and the pain comes back up at us. Our tendency emotionally is to like never take a hot shower again, right? Our tendency is to avoid triggering the pain. I'm not getting in a hot shower because it hurts my blister. Well, I'm not doing that again because it triggers this wound. But the longer it goes, the more it heals, the better I can get in that hot shower. The better, the more courage I have to face that wound. And so when you have good self-care, that's right, the trigger's always telling you a story. When you have good self-care, like journaling and meditation, when you have practical tools that you can use when you feel triggered, like Robin's describing, that's a perfect time to step into or allow the pain to exist so that you can read it and understand it. So good for you, Robin. Okay, there you go. My content this week is about boundaries. I have a couple of videos. One's going up tomorrow, over the weekend. And then it was interesting. I was sitting down kind of outlining the course I'm going to do on boundaries. And I never really stopped to think about how many different kinds of boundaries there are, right? And so I have a very long video. I hope it edits down to something more manageable. I haven't edited it yet, but I think I put an extra D in that. Yeah, that's interesting. It was even interesting to me as I was kind of creating it, just sitting back and thinking about all the different kinds of boundaries that are important to set. The ones I sit back and think about how many boundaries most of us don't have. So, yeah. It's so strange to have people in the house. Do you want your charger? Okay. You going to bed? Love you. Good night. Melissa's on. Hi, Melissa. Emily said, hi, Melissa. Let's see, what else? Gosh, I can't think of anything. Do you guys have any questions? Because I know I just went on a big rant. What else? Good, good, Mark. And you know, by the way, the triggers will always explain patterns. You bring up such a good point. I was working with a client. I only had a couple sessions this week, and I was working with a client on for one of them that I've worked with, I think, for 8 years, maybe 10 years on and off. I saw him the first time when at the time it was he and his wife doing couples counseling. I think that was 10 years ago. Their marriage didn't make it. I didn't see him. I think I worked with him like through a settling in period. And then he took like a year break, and then one day he called, and I worked with him for maybe a year and a half on some other things, and then he took another year-long break. And then we started getting into some really nitty-gritty, because every other thing in his life had stabilized. No problem, Robin. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you next Thursday. What was really cool about that is, you know, I worked with him through these events, these life events. And I think I think this is an interesting point too, right? Because sometimes life events are the things that take us to therapy. A marriage challenge, a job loss, communication problems, empty nest, a death. Those kind of things take us to therapy, right? But under those kind of conditions, we're typically unable to do the internal work that needs to be done just because we're humans with patterns. And often what we'll eventually discover is that the pattern is part of the problem. Now, maybe not always, right? Maybe not always with a job loss or grief, but it definitely can contribute to the type of reaction that we have to the life event. Eventually, he came to me and said, you know, things are great, generally speaking, but I still don't feel happy. And I really want to understand why I don't feel happy. And so we worked for a little while. He went through the Elevate class, which was this program I was doing a couple of years ago. And he kind of graduated from that, and there were some other events happening in his life, and he took another break. And then he called again, and he said, okay, same things are happening. I need to figure this out. And we spent 50 weeks consecutively talking about and breaking apart, having conversations that we hadn't had in all of the time leading up to that. Now, one might ask, well, is that because you didn't ask the right questions, Leslyn? Or is it because, why? Why did you work with somebody all that time, but it wasn't until this time that you started really asking the questions? And I can't tell you the answer. I think sometimes we get in survival mode, we get in stopgap mode, and when we're in those phases, we don't ask the hard, substantial questions. Long story short, here we are. I think it's been another 5 years since, maybe 3 years since we had those conversations. And we absolutely recognized a pattern. And in our last conversation, he brought up a challenge, and I said, hold up, this is the same thing. This is the same thing that we've been talking about, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, what? And I said, yeah, look. And I just kind of spelled it out for him. And he goes, well, shit. I said, yeah, same thing. It's always going to be that thing. Because that's the thing that he hasn't fully accepted about himself, right? He hasn't fully accepted that he leans into this sensation. Truly, Melissa. And I'll share what it is because that's not identifying. But this particular person grew up feeling invisible, like so many millions of people. And the way that he interprets being invisible is very situation dependent. But he's so hypersensitive to it that something as simple as his partner not texting back for 6 hours because they were in a meeting or got distracted activates that trigger. I must be invisible. And what I would tell you is that's the intensity of the pain that existed for him in childhood, right? The pain was so intense in childhood, this feeling of being invisible. And in his perception, it was everywhere. Family, school, friends, sports, everywhere. Now, to some extent, some of that was probably self-fulfilling, right? Because when we feel, especially with something like that, abandonment, invisibility, when we feel disconnected, it's so interesting. And because this person has a hobby right now that is bridging that gap. Because what is another thing that's connected to invisibility? Our sense of connection, right? If we feel invisible, we feel disconnected. And that's one of the reasons that, thanks, Bree. That's one of the reasons that relationships are so difficult if you grew up feeling invisible. Now, somebody can grow up feeling invisible and learn how to self-soothe, and it kind of mitigates that sensation. This particular individual struggles to notice when it's their responsibility to self-soothe. There's this pattern, again, of looking outward to fill that bucket of connectedness. But Brene Brown, if you haven't, if you're relating to this at all, you need to read the book Into the Wilderness by Brene Brown, because she talks a lot about the vulnerability of connection and how feeling alone isn't about how many people are surrounding you. It's about how well you know you can fill your own bucket. Because when you're not walking around asking people to fill your bucket, you automatically are connecting to them. You walk around with a full bucket, and often you're able to share what's in your bucket, and that's a kind of an automatic method of connecting, right? Is sharing what you have, which is another reason that benevolence is so healthy for us, because benevolence connects us. So anyway, really interesting. I mean, patterns, I'm kind of the belief that most of us have one or two core injuries, and those core injuries are the things that perpetually keep us moving in the direction of healing. So yeah. If you, I have a new book for you guys. I haven't read it yet. But I think last Thursday, oh no, I guess not. I guess I haven't talked to you since then. I had lunch with my brother on Friday last week, so I haven't talked to you. And we had an interesting, such an interesting conversation. Now, I have 3 brothers. One of them is a full brother. The other 2 are half brothers. This is my full brother. I'm 100% convinced he is a fellow soul traveler, like connected to me from a spiritual space. And we always have really great discussions, but I asked him if he would be interested in doing a podcast with me. And we talked a lot about what kind of a podcast it might be. And I'm thinking that it's going to be kind of a what if podcast. What if that existential, transcendental, philosophical kind of big thinking kind of questions. I think we always really have such great discussions when we go in that direction. But we were talking about a book called Proof of Heaven, and it's written by I was telling him about our live the night before. I think last Thursday night I was talking about reincarnation. So Eben Alexander, MD, he's a neurosurgeon, and he had a brain bleed, and he clinically died, and he wrote this book, and I haven't read it yet. I want to read it. I did see an interview with him, and I thought from his interview that it was a little bit more religiously oriented than I like to read, but some of the things that Pat was saying really intrigued me. Shoot, I just lost my, one of the things Pat said is when Dr. Alexander was in this state, one of the conversations he remembers having is, what is the point of life? Which is, we talk about that every once in a while, especially when we're talking about reincarnation. And apparently he was told that the point of existence The whole reason we're here is to advance humanity. So that sounds rational enough, right? So what does that mean? Advance humanity. And if you've been in my lives enough, you know that I'm a firm believer that the only thing that really ever matters, and the whole point I have always believed that the whole point of living was to acquire the capacity for complete and total love, which is hard, right? Last week I was saying, what would the world be like if there was no judgment? And if we're fully in the essence of love, we're not going to be judgmental. And that's so hard. I was watching TV tonight and I said, oh my gosh, that man is so homely. And my daughter goes, Mom. I'm like, I'm sorry, you're right. She said, you can say I don't find him attractive. She's 100% right, by the way. I love it when my kids hold me accountable for being me, the person that they hear me say I want to be. She's 100% correct. And I appreciate that she corrected me because that's definitely much more in line with who I believe that I am versus judging this man's appearance, right? Anyway, I really love the idea that our role here is to advance humanity. And I don't think there's much difference. I think the way to advance humanity is through love and acceptance, right? And what a wonderful world it would be if there was no judgment and all we did was accept. I'm not sure that's possible. I think somehow we have to eliminate greed, and I don't know how we do that. But anyway, I thought I'd share that because I really loved the idea of it. And yeah, really loved the idea of it. And I thought I'd throw out there that Pat and I talked about doing a podcast. A podcast is a lot of work, but I've been wanting to do one. And this is right up the alley of some of the things that I really want to do because as much as I love behavior and psychology and helping people and healing pain, and I do love that, I also really love asking those big, hard questions and promoting the investigation of those ideas. So with that in mind, here it is, 10:30 almost, and I can't believe an hour and a half has gone by. Time is just, and you guys just let me talk and ramble. So thank you. Please come next Thursday. I'm not going to talk to you between now and then because Monday is New Year's. I hope you all have a fantastic New Year's. And I look forward to talking about, I'll spend at least 45 minutes to an hour talking about the new codependency and what it does to us. And hello, love, I didn't see you pop in. What it does to us, how it forms, what we can do about it, and how to communicate when you realize that you're codependent, what you need to look for. Because I think that's so important. All right. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Take good care of yourself. And yes, love you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me and being here. I really, really and truly do appreciate you. Have a wonderful night.